The sun sank behind the mountains, leaving the ocean tinted in crimson and gold. Waves crashed violently against the rocky cliffs, echoing through the island like thunder from another world. In the distance, a deep roar rolled across the jungle, the sound of a king waking from his slumber. King Kong stood atop a ridge, chest rising and falling like the tides. The air shimmered with tension, the earth itself holding its breath. Tonight, the island would remember its ruler once more. Far beneath the cliffs, a strange hum filled the air. The ground trembled as the ocean began to churn unnaturally. A pulse of light flickered deep below the waves, growing brighter with every heartbeat. The creatures of the jungle went silent. Even the birds stopped singing. Kong turned his head toward the horizon, his instinct screaming that something ancient was awakening. He had ruled this island for decades, but this was different. This wasn't a challenge from nature. It was a warning. The ocean erupted. A colossal shadow burst from the depths, sending a wall of water crashing onto the shore. Scales the size of shields glistened under the dying sun. A monster, reptilian, enormous, older than time itself, emerged from the abyss. Its roar split the sky, shaking trees and splitting stones. Kong's eyes flared. He had seen monsters before, but none like this. The island trembled between two titans who had no place in the same world. Kong pounded his chest, his roar answering the sea beast's challenge. The sound rolled across the island, echoing through canyons and caves. Animals fled in panic. Trees shook, birds scattered. The ocean boiled as the giant creature, its eyes burning like molten gold, moved toward the shore. When its claws scraped against stone, the ground cracked. The first step of war had been taken. The clash began with a storm. Waves crashed as Kong charged down from the cliffs, his roar merging with thunder. The sea beast lunged upward, jaws wide, revealing rows of teeth-long as swords. Their collision sent shockwaves through the water, a deafening explosion of power. Lightning flashed overhead, turning the battlefield into a vision of chaos, water, rock, and fury colliding beneath the heavens. Kong swung his massive fist, striking the creature across the jaw. The impact sent water flying high into the sky. The monster retaliated, its tail whipping through the surf, slamming into Kong's chest. He staggered but did not fall. His rage burned brighter than pain. Smaller creatures watched in terror. Flying beasts, giant reptiles, things that had survived from another age. They screamed and scattered, their primitive minds knowing that when gods fight, mortals must run. Yet above them, lightning illuminated Kong's silhouette, unbroken, defiant, drenched in salt and rain. He roared again, louder than the storm itself. The sea beast struck again, diving beneath the waves, then leaping high into the air. Its body glowed faintly with a strange blue light, pulsing through its scales. Kong's eyes widened. He braced himself, but the monster unleashed a surge of energy, a shockwave that blasted through the water and slammed into him like a hurricane. Kong roared in agony, falling to one knee, smoke rising from his chest. The island quaked as if the gods themselves were fighting. But Kong rose again, slower this time, his breath heavy. He wiped the blood from his mouth, eyes burning with rage and resolve. He turned toward the glowing sea, fists clenched. He had been tested before, but never like this. The roar that left his throat was not one of fury. It was one of survival, of dominance, of a king refusing to surrender. Lightning split the sky as the monster emerged once more, bellowing so loud that the ocean seemed to tremble in fear. The two giants faced each other across the burning sea, the storm raging around them like destiny itself. And then, without hesitation, Kong charged again, into the heart of chaos, into the storm, into legend. The waves boiled beneath the storm as Kong and the sea beast clashed again, their roars lost in the thunder's fury. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating their battle like the wrath of gods. The ocean burned blue from the creature's pulse of energy, every flicker casting monstrous shadows on the jungle cliffs. Kong drove his fist into its skull once, twice, 3 times, each strike sending water surging like explosions. But the beast refused to fall. It snapped its jaws around Kong's arm, dragging him deep beneath the waves. Bubbles rose violently to the surface as the two titans vanished into the depths. The ocean glowed faintly from below, ripples of light distorting the storm above. Then suddenly, a colossal surge erupted. Kong burst from the water, roaring as he ripped the creature free, tossing it onto the rocky shore. The jungle shook as the beast landed, its massive tail destroying trees like blades of grass. Kong stood drenched and furious, breathing heavily as rain poured down his shoulders. For a moment, silence fell, the kind of silence before the end of the world. Then, from deep within the jungle, another sound rose. A second roar. Deeper. Older. The ground split open as something massive pushed its way through the earth. Out of the darkness crawled another monster, spiked, reptilian, its back glowing with volcanic fire. The air turned hot. The storm hissed against its skin. A third presence had entered the battlefield. The island was no longer just a kingdom. It was an arena. Kong turned, eyes narrowing as the new beast towered before him, molten light dripping from its back. The sea creature hissed beside it, recovering, the two forming a temporary alliance, two titans united by destruction. For the first time in his life, Kong found himself outnumbered. He bared his teeth, slamming his fists against his chest, the sound echoing like war drums across the island. The battle began again. Fire, water, and thunder colliding in one place. The reptilian monster roared, spewing molten flame that turned trees into ash. Kong dodged, rolling across the mud as the fire scorched the ground where he'd stood. The sea beast struck from the side, slamming him with its tail, throwing him back into a stone ridge. The cliff shattered on impact. For a heartbeat, everything went black. Then Kong's roar returned, deeper, angrier, unstoppable. He lunged at the lava beast, grabbing it by the throat and driving it backward into the ocean. Steam exploded as molten heat met salt water. The sea boiled. The sea beast screamed as the explosion hit it too, sending it thrashing in agony. The sky flashed white as Kong emerged from the steam, his fur burned in patches but his eyes alive with fury. He lifted a massive boulder and hurled it with all his might, crushing the lava beast's jaw. The sound echoed for miles. But even victory brought no peace. The ground began to shake again, stronger this time, a tremor that came not from the island but from beneath it. The earth cracked open like a wound, and from the chasm rose another roar, one so powerful that the air itself seemed to tremble. Out of the glowing fissure climbed a creature larger than anything before, its body armored like stone, its eyes burning red. The king of the underworld had awakened. Kong stared up, his breath catching. This was no ordinary monster. It was ancient, a being from a time when the world was fire and chaos. The island shook under its weight, trees toppling like blades of grass. The sea creature and the lava beast recoiled in fear. For a brief moment, all three monsters froze. Even they sensed this was no equal. This was a god. The ancient beast roared, and the shockwave leveled an entire section of jungle. Lightning struck the mountains. The ocean receded, as if afraid to touch it. Kong braced himself, tightening his fists, his roar answering with pure defiance. The sky turned red, fire raining down from the heavens. And then, the god beast charged. The impact was cataclysmic. Kong was thrown across the battlefield, slamming through stone and mud. The island cracked beneath them as if trying to escape the destruction. Yet even as he struggled to rise, blood dripping from his mouth, his eyes burned with one truth: this was his island. His home. And he would not let it fall. The sky bled crimson as the god beast advanced, each step shaking mountains and breaking the earth. Lava seeped from cracks, rivers boiled, and lightning danced like serpents across the clouds. Kong stood in the middle of this apocalyptic storm, battered but unbroken. His fur was scorched, his body bleeding, yet his eyes burned brighter than ever. He looked at the towering creature before him and knew, if he fell here, the island would die with him. The god beast roared again, its sound tearing through the jungle like a hurricane. Trees were ripped from the ground, animals fled in terror. Kong answered with his own roar, the kind that reached the heavens, raw and primal, echoing the heartbeat of nature itself. He slammed his fists together, the sound thunderous, a declaration of war from the last true king of the wild. They collided like continents crashing. Kong struck first, his massive fist slamming into the god-beast's face. The creature retaliated instantly, claws tearing through his side. Blood spluttered across the rocks. Kong howled but did not fall. He grabbed the monster's horn, twisted, and drove his knee into its chest. The impact shook the world. The ground split open, and fire burst from below as if the island itself was screaming. The god-beast struck back, its tail whipping around, hitting Kong with enough force to send him flying into a mountain. The stone exploded on impact. For a long moment, Kong lay still, buried beneath rubble. The beast roared in victory, turning toward the sea, ready to claim its new dominion. But then, the mountain moved. Stones began to shift. A hand emerged, huge, blackened, trembling but alive. And from the ashes, Kong rose once more. Lightning flashed behind him as he climbed to his feet, eyes glowing like burning amber. He tore a tree from the ground, stripped it of its branches, and thrust it into the volcano's fire. The trunk burst into flame. Kong roared, raising the burning weapon high above his head, fire against darkness. The god-beast turned, surprised for the first time, as the ape charged through the storm with the fury of the earth itself. The two collided again, fire and shadow exploding on impact. Kong drove the flaming spear deep into the creature's chest. The god-beast screamed, its roar shaking the sky. But it wasn't enough. The monster grabbed him, claws digging deep, trying to crush him. Kong's vision blurred, his strength fading. Yet through the pain, he looked toward the horizon, toward the jungle, his home, the creatures he'd sworn to protect. And something inside him reignited. With a roar that split the heavens, Kong twisted the weapon and ripped it free, fire bursting outward like a volcano erupting. The god-beast stumbled back, its chest glowing with molten cracks. Kong seized the moment. He leapt, swinging both fists down with all his might, crashing them into the monster's skull. The sound was like thunder breaking the world in half. The god-beast fell, its roar fading into the wind, its body collapsing into the earth. Silence followed, deep, powerful silence. The rain began to fall again, washing away the blood and smoke. The sky softened from red to grey. Kong stood over the fallen titan, chest heaving, eyes full of exhaustion and triumph. The island trembled once more, not from fear, but from life returning. Birds began to call again. The sea calmed. The wind whispered through the broken trees like a sigh of relief. Kong knelt beside the creature's remains, touching its cooling scales. There was no hate in his gaze now, only respect. It had fought as a god, and fallen as one. He looked toward the rising sun, the light, washing over his battered body, glinting off his scars. He had survived. He had protected his kingdom. He had earned his title not through rage, but through sacrifice. As dawn painted the horizon gold, Kong climbed to the highest cliff. Below him, the island stretched out, green, smoking, alive. The sea shimmered. The creatures emerged from the shadows, lifting their heads toward their king. Kong stood tall against the light, the wind carrying his roar across land and sea. It was not a roar of dominance, but of renewal, a promise that this island, this world, would live on. And when the echoes faded into the clouds, only one sound remained, the rhythm of waves against the shore, steady and eternal. The war of monsters had ended, but the legend of King Kong had just begun.